All right, we are back, and we are joined here by Greg Palast. This is Black Tower Radio. I am your host, Jake Fox. We're broadcasting live on 1040 AM, 92.1 FM, WYSL in Rochester, New York. Greg Palast is the author of the New York Times bestsellers Billionaire and Ballot Bandits, Armed Madhouse, The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and the highly acclaimed Vulture's Picnic, named Book of the Year 2012 on BBC Newsnight Review. His books have been translated into 24 languages. His brand new film of his documentary reports for BBC Newsnight and Democracy Now! Is called Vultures and Vote Rustlers. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, glad to be with you again.
Thank you. This is breaking news. The Argentine Congress just passed a debt law to defy a U.S. court ruling that sent them into default. They're fighting this thing tooth and nail to not become what Chris Hedges has termed a sacrifice zone to multinational imperialist capitalist vultures that basically control our entire political process. But you can break it down a lot better than I can. So
yeah, Hedges would say that, wouldn't he? And why do we care about what happens with a bunch of tango dancers and gauchos on the other side of the globe? And the answer is because that could determine who is the next president of the United States. The American public doesn't really know what goes on and what's at stake in our elections. We're just pawns moved around the chessboard. Now, here's what the kings, queens, and bishops do. All right? Argentina, their military dictatorship, which was buddied up with, Richard Nixon and Reagan and the rest, they had bankrupted their nation on a military spending spree and corrupt giveaways of Argentina's resources. In other words, it's like Alaska, okay, and like half of the resources of the United States. All right, so Argentina was busted out. They declared a bankruptcy, which is difficult for a nation, but they did that. But then they cut a deal with the big banks out of New York, George Soros and others, saying, look, we'll pay you when we recover. We're not going to pay like usurious interest rates, but we'll pay you off. And they've been paying. Argentina's economy under a left-wing government, under the first Nestor Kirchner, and now the new president, his widow, he passed away, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. They've had this very progressive government, very much allied with Venezuela and Chavez in Ecuador. They've had a very progressive government which is reallocated income in their nation, causing their national income and for everyone to rise through the roof. Just a wonderful economic success story. Then down swoops the vulture, a guy named Paul the Vulture Singer, who I've been tracking across 4 continents for the last 7 years. Paul the Vulture Singer is a guy who buys up debts of the most impoverished nations of the world. How do you buy up a debt? Not easily, but in other words, he's a repo man. But he's a repo man on a billion-dollar scale, tens of billions of dollars. So he became the repo man, even though Argentina has been paying off 97% of its creditors. He has refused to take payments from Argentina, and instead, for the $49 million in bonds he bought, he wants $3 billion. And if they pay him $3 billion, it starts a cascade effect where everyone else gets in line and wants this monster giant payday, and then Argentina is bankrupt again. Why do we care? The answer is that Paul the Vulture Singer is the number one donor to the Republican Party in New York, and he is the most important donor, more important than the Koch brothers, more important than Sheldon Adelson, more important than anyone alive in the Republican Party. He just had a confab. Jeb Bush and Paul Ryan were in the audience. That's how powerful he is. He doesn't invite guys to speak, politicians to speak. He invites politicians to listen to him while he lectures them on how the world should be. This guy is probably one, and by the way, the name The Vulture, I didn't give it to him. That was given to him by other bankers, so you can well imagine. This guy is, according to, and his enemies, by the way, so he's the number one donor of the Republican Party, unknown to the public, very known to the Republicans, and he is taking on, not only trying to bankrupt the nation of Argentina, it's horrendous. There are people eating, you had teachers looking for food out of garbage cans 10 years ago, and he wants to return them to that. Again, he's refusing payment for the debts. He wants a big, giant bonus. And he found some 84-year-old crack-brained judge in New York to go along with him. Several judges have told him he's crazy, but he found a crazy judge to say it's okay to be crazy. On the other side are the big Democratic donors, mainly J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Goldman Sachs, United Bank of Switzerland, and George Soros are on the other side, the big Democratic donors, who are happy to get their pound of flesh out of Argentina, but they figure a pound is enough. You don't have to cut off Argentina's legs and eat them. That's what the vulture wants. In other words, they're saying just nibble at Argentina, don't devour the nation and kill it. This is what's going on, but it is in effect kind of the real story of the 2016 election. Whoever wins that will determine how we deal with Argentina and other nations, whether they just become vulture food or merely with who wins, the bank bloodsuckers, who at least, one good thing about vampires, at least they let you live. They just suck your blood. Or the vultures who chew your corpse.
I mean, digging into this guy's background, it's like looking at a rap sheet. He bought $11 million of Peruvian debt, and then 4 years later, after trips to court in the U.S., U.K., Luxembourg, Belgium, I mean, I could go on. There's more countries, but he got a 400% return on that $11 million buy of.
Well, let me tell you a little more about that story, okay? For those of you who turned in, this is Greg Palast. I've been hunting this guy all over the world for BBC television. Okay, the Peruvian story is really serious stuff because the president of Peru was wanted for murder. Okay, no kid you not. He was charged with murder while he was president, and he was about to be arrested, and he escaped by taking the presidential jet, the Peruvian Air Force One, to Japan. That was Fujimori because he also held Japanese citizenship while he was president of Peru. You like this story so far? Now, how did he get the jet? Paul the Vulture Singer had seized the jet as payment for these ridiculous debts. Again, he's a repo man, but he doesn't take your old beat-up Buick. He takes the presidential jet. Same thing, though. Same exact thing. Same repo action, right? But he told Fujimori, you sign off and you pay me $58 million for the $11 million that I put in. You pay me $58 million. I'll give you the keys to the jet. It was signed off. Singer got his millions out of the poor nation of Peru, and Fujimori escaped ahead of the cops to arrest him for murder.
Yeah.
At the beginning, I chased the guy to the Congo, to Africa, Paul the Vulture Singer, where he was basically sucking up the money that the United States was giving the Congo to end the cholera epidemic. Nice guy. Nice guy. In fact, even Bush. I mean, obviously he was giving big money to the Republican Party, but not that much to Bush, because Bush was kind of weirdly establishment, right? Remember, this guy's fighting the big banks. The banks consider him a rogue. The banks call him a vulture, all right? And John Conyers, the progressive congressman, Democrat, went into Bush's office after I did a report for BBC and said, what are you doing about this guy? And, Bush did call in the Justice Department. They didn't do anything, but, at least, it's not like these guys don't know what's going on. They know very well.
Yeah, I mean, he finds a country in trouble. I mean, this is this guy's pattern. He finds a country in trouble, he buys its debt, and then he doesn't care about the economics, the poverty, or distress he's causing. He just wants his money back plus interest.
Well, it's more than plus interest. In other words, he manipulates the interest and the penalties. His calculations are from the moon. I mean, he bought Argentine debt for $49 million. He wants $3 billion or else. And And one way he's changed things is that he got the New York State Legislature to change the way interest is calculated, so that if you owe money from a court action, you pay, excuse me, compound interest instead of simple interest. Now, if you did okay in your fifth grade math, you would know that after 15 years, the difference between compound and simple is enormous. It's, for this guy, $1 billion out of the pockets of poor nations. Now, how did he do that? I mean, he has his donations to the Democratic and Republican Party in New York are astonishing. In fact, he's known as the #1 donor to the gay marriage rights campaign. But that's purely a cover for big money to buy up influence with the New York State Legislature to do his bidding on his vulture attacks. Because most bonds in this planet, not just the United States, are under New York law. And he changes New York law. And he does it under the cover of gay marriage rights. Love that?
He has the same sort of psychopathic attitude that a lot of the billionaires you cover in your work, the same attitude that Charles Koch has, the famous quote, "I want my fair share, and that's all of it." These guys don't care about human suffering. I mean, they've lost a real sense of their humanity from my point of view.
Yeah, they don't care. I've talked to, I've been hunting down these billionaires for years. Sorry, I'm having a cough problem here. The singer must be putting something here. Yeah, I mean, one of the problems is that they consider themselves what Nietzsche called Übermensch, supermen, who are above the normal moral codes of the rest of us. So they just so that's one of the problems we have, is that the usual code doesn't apply to them, and they don't care if they bring down the whole system. See, if for example, this attack on Argentina, understand, excuse me, this threatens the profitability of J.P. Morgan, of Goldman Sachs. Now, how many people can do that, right? He's got these guys scared because he's threatening to bring down the whole system of international finance if he isn't paid. He's prepared to do what's called cross defaults across the planet, so that all these banks holding Argentine bonds now have to write them down as zero value, even though Argentina's been paying. Argentina just sent a $500 million payment to the Bank of New York to divide up among its creditors. Argentina is paying. It's not a deadbeat. I heard on the Colbert Show something on this story. He's making fun of Singer and Argentina. He's saying, "Oh, Argentina's a deadbeat." No, it isn't. Argentina's been paying its debts regularly. This guy's literally got a judge to stop the payment of stop Argentina from paying debts. I know this sounds weird. The judge has ordered Argentina to stop paying its debts. They have to pay this guy first. That means that all these big banks are being threatened. They don't like it. But the trouble is, it doesn't exactly help you and I, because we end up bailing out these banks. Anything that they're short of, we make up, okay? You're talking about big commercial banks. They have a shortfall, we write the check. They lose, we pay. And so it's all ultimately coming from you and me. Whatever Singer gets, when he gets money from the Congo, whatever money the Congo has came from us. When he started grabbing at Argentina's doing well now, but the write-offs allowing Argentina to recover, that came from the U.S. Treasury. Again, that comes from us. Whatever we are doing for these nations, he's just basically figured out a way to suck up the money coming from the U.S. Treasury, from the U.S. taxpayers, going to banks, going to poor nations, and he's basically come up with a gimmick, a vicious, vicious gimmick, to seize that cash.
I mean, what you're describing to me sounds like an ideological suicide bomber.
Yeah.
He wants...
He's very much, yeah. You got it exactly. He's kind of the financial terrorist in the helicopter pulling the pin out of the grenade. In one report, which I'm still trying to confirm, because apparently he did this when Greece collapsed a couple years ago. All the creditors of Greece agreed to an 80% write-off. He didn't want to take an 80% write-off. He wanted an 80% profit. And he said, if you don't pay me, I'm going to bring down this whole reorganization of Greece. That will cause a default of every single major bank across Europe. I'm going to bring down the entire financial system of this continent. They paid him every penny he demanded. In the Congo, they paid him every penny he demanded. And, it's only that the Argentine government has said, we're not going to pay extortion. And by the way, one of the stories I did about Paul the Vulture Singer, if you read my last book, Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, is that this guy also took down the U.S. Treasury for he and his buddies for $12.9 billion. $12.9 billion. It affects your area in Rochester because there are people in your area who worked for divisions of Delphi Corporation, the old GM Delco.
Yep.
That was purchased by Paul the Vulture Singer. Delphi was purchased by Paul the Vulture Singer, and he told the U.S. government, if you don't pay me the $12 billion I want now, I'm cutting off GM's parts and Chrysler's parts. When I say cutting off their parts, the auto czar asked the head of GM, how long can you go without Delphi parts? And they said, maybe 24 hours.
Whoa.
Because it was all one company, effectively. 24 hours. So they had 24 hours. And understand, it wouldn't cause GM to go into bankruptcy. GM was bankrupt. It would have caused the liquidation of GM. We would have lost every GM job permanently done, finished, closed down. So Obama authorized writing the check to the Vulture. $12.9 billion. He personally, in his pocket, put almost $1 billion in his own pocket. And the U.S. Treasury Deputy Secretary said, this is extortion. Extortion. And Obama said, well, and paid it. Now, the president of Argentina has also said that what Singer is doing, the Vulture, is extortion. He used the same word as the U.S. Treasury, the same word, extortion. But the president of Argentina, unlike Obama, is saying, I don't pay extortion. Do what you will. I will not pay extortion money. I don't pay ransom.
This guy is willing to sacrifice everything on the altar of his idea of capitalism.
Well, think about it. Sorry. There were 29 Delphi plants in the United States before he bought it up. There are now only 5. And not one union job left. Not one union job at Delphi left. The only union jobs that were Delphi were those he sold some plants back to General Motors. And we talk, there's a whole big deal, and I know that affected people in your area where managers lost a hunk of their pension. That was Singer. He put it in his pocket, man. People blamed Obama. Now, I'm not a big fan of Obama. I'm going to tell you that right now. But it wasn't Obama who did that. It was Singer. He snatched the money out of that pension.
When you break down the stats of the political donors in our country, the 1% that people talk about that control everything, it's amazing. It's staggering. The percentage of population that these donors represent, 0.01%. But okay.
0.00001%. I mean, understand, Singer has the Vulture has a little club called Restore Our Future, a little billionaires club. It's about a dozen guys. You probably have no more than 25 major billionaire donors. That's it. It's really down to about 25 guys who basically fund our election system. That's it.
but the percentage, I mean, if you look back to 2012, the percentage of all campaign donations they gave was 28%. I mean, this certainly isn't a representative democracy. If some town doesn't want some toxic mining operation to get installed there that might poison the local drinking water, I mean, they don't stand a fighting chance against these guys. They're going to come in and destroy everything.
Well, that's interesting. Despite the fact these guys have the billions and they're tough, they don't always win. Look at the president of Argentina. She's standing up. I went to Liberia, spoke to the president of Liberia. She stood up to the vultures and won. We were able to get the laws changed in the United Kingdom and in the British Commonwealth. I work with BBC after I put my reports on the air. Singer is not allowed. Is banned. His operations are banned from the courts of the Commonwealth. And that means, from Canada to Britain to Hong Kong. Most of the world is slammed out to this guy. And actually, most U.S. courts wouldn't listen to this guy. Like I say, he found this, in the case of Argentina, he found this 84-year-old Nixon appointee. And I'm going to be very straight. I usually don't say this about federal judges, but this guy is a brain melt job. He's very right-wing for what few brain cells are left. And he's gone along with the crack-brained ideas of Paul the Vulture Singer. And I usually don't say it about a federal judge, but that's just the truth. We can't get rid of federal judges under the Constitution. He's 84. He's not corpus mentis, as they say. Every lawyer knows it. But, you can't remove a federal judge.
I know you've recently written about the anniversary of the Gulf oil disaster and BP's role in all of that.
Yeah, and as you know, last week there was a major court decision in which BP was found grossly negligent. If you go to gregpalast.com, it just went up on my site about 2 minutes ago. It was originally published today in TruthDig. If you go to gregpalast.com, you can read the BP report. And in that case, again, another investigative report for British television. I've been following these guys for years. In the case of the Deepwater Horizon, when the judge said gross negligence, he was being very kind. For example, I'll just give you a good example from the case. BP, when that well blew out because of massive high pressure, before the blowout at 5 p.m. that day, the managers measured 1,400 pounds per square inch pressure in a pipe that should have no pressure, zero in it. It should have been cut off. So what did they do? Instead of saying, oh my God, we have massive pressure building, this thing could blow, we better do something quick. Instead, they went and took a measurement from another pipe that was dead that read zero pressure. So they could keep going ahead with their process of they're trying to disconnect the rig because they paid $750,000 a day for the for those rigs, deep ocean rigs, and they wanted to get the hell out of there. So to save money, they ignored this test, which said this thing's going to blow. And they're hoping, well, maybe it won't. But they jacked with all the other systems, so there it went.
How are the marshes and the coastline doing in Louisiana? I mean, is that anywhere close to recovered, or what's exactly happening there?
No, in fact, you can download my film for free called Vultures and Vote Rustlers, which gives you the story of the vultures and the story of BP. It starts out with the story of BP in deep water. And you'll see I'm in the Gulf. BP's cleanup crews are there. 2 years after the spill, they're still there. And they sit there and they literally use kiddie pooper scoopers. I kid you not. Little pooper scoopers to pull oil off the surface. But if you dig down 8 inches, you got all this ooze in the shoals off the coast. And it's going into the into the water column. The thing is that it's not just BP. It's Chevron. It's Exxon. It's it's not just, and Shell, who've been for years treating the Gulf like a toilet. And so a lot of in fact, what was interesting to me is when I saw, excuse me, Anderson Cooper pull an oily bird out of the marshes at Grand Isle. There was no BP oil at Grand Isle. He's pulling out oil from Chevron. That bird was covered with Chevron oil. And that's one of the things that's not much discussed. It's not just the BP spill. There's so much leakage in those wells. You have, every month, something close to the leakage that you had from the Deepwater Horizon. Just coming out of the thousands of wells that have been dug there. And in the case of Exxon, when it was Standard Oil, left uncapped. I flew over the region, and while I went by the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster zone, I also went along the bayous and identified a dozen oil slicks coming out of uncapped wells. It's it's just America's toilet. The end of the Mississippi is just the Mississippi is a giant toilet. We just flush everything into it.
How is any of this allowed to happen? Just these overflowing oil wells dumping into the ocean? How is there no regulation against this?
Well, Exxon used to be Standard Oil, and it's claiming that Standard Oil took the oil from these wells, but they were owned by individual owners that sold Standard Oil the oil. Just like, for example, the BP oil is not BP's. That's U.S. government oil. And we own that hole, the Macondo well. We own that hole under the ocean. That's you and me. But on the land, there are private mineral owners. And they're saying, we drilled the well, we sucked the oil, but it's not us. And BP, but Exxon has been fighting in court for years, saying we're not going to clean it up. We're not going to pay for the cleanup. And that's one of the problems we have. So that, while everyone's focused on BP, and they did a horrendous job. I mean, understand they, like I say, they faked the tests. And also one of the stories I have, you can, by the way, you can download this film for free. We got a grant from a foundation, Cloud Mountain Foundation, and we're able to offer, you can download it for free. But the first film, I went to the Caspian Sea and found out that 17 months before the Deepwater Horizon blew, another BP rig blew in the Caspian Sea for the same reason, bad cementing jobs, and they had covered it up. So I'm not trying to let BP off the hook, but I'm just saying the other oil companies are pooping all over the Gulf and all over the marshes there, and there's a lot of toxin there, and there's a reason why that area is called Cancer Alley. It's not like that's okay. It's not okay. People die because of it, and it's poor people, mostly minorities, but it's the poor of the Gulf Coast, and they you don't live long there for good reason, and it's not an act of God that's destroyed that place. It's an act of Exxon and an act of BP.
From all of these investigative reports you do, covering all of these extremely powerful companies and extremely powerful figures, and you do these damning reports on them, I got to ask you, how are you still alive, Greg Palast?
Well, I mean, the way I'm still alive is that their main concern is stopping the information flow, not stopping the informer. They figure if not me, there's going to be a couple other reporters, like Chris Hedges and others who are out there who really dig out the stuff. So while they threaten me, and I do get threats, in fact, Paul the Vulture Singer called my boss at BBC Television in London and said, "We have a file on Greg Palast." So they hunt, they track me, they follow me, whatever they do, and they try to scare networks off from running my reports. And they've done that successfully, by the way, in the U.S. I'm prime time in London and BBC in Europe and Latin America, Africa, Asia, but not in my own country. You'll see me on the top of nightly news in Canada or Britain, but not here. So they scare away people here. So as long as my reports are shut down, as long as I'm muffled and no one in America gets my reports, they don't care very much. So they're not worried about, I don't have to worry about my safety. I just have to worry that I've been silenced. That's the biggest single problem. I do worry, though, I have to say, about my sources' safety. My sources have suffered severely. I try to keep them as protected as possible, but when I went to the Caspian Sea, to the nation of Azerbaijan, on BP's prior blowout prior to the Deepwater Horizon, I was arrested. But they let me go. I'm a foreign journalist. They're not going to keep me in prison. And so they let me go pretty quickly. However, my sources have disappeared. And I don't think they went on vacation. So that's a problem. I don't know how they found out who was tipping me off, but they found at least two of my sources who were shut down. And, it could have been just something as much as intimidation, but there's a lot of people in dungeons in these nations controlled by British Petroleum and the rest of the petroleum oligarchs. So, one of the things you find if you download my film, and again, it's free for a week at least because of a foundation grant at gregpalast.com. If you go to gregpalast.com, you get this film for free. One of the things is that in this nation of Azerbaijan, which you may have never even heard of, a big oil center, a big oil nation in the Caspian, they had an elected government. And it was an Islamic nation, is an Islamic nation. They say, you can't have democracies in Islamic nations. Well, there's a good reason. We don't allow it. They had a vote in Azerbaijan. They elected kind of an intellectual, a professor type. And he was overthrown by the CIA and MI6 to make sure that BP and Amoco Oil got control of that nation's massive oil reserves in the Caspian. So that was it. He wouldn't just turn over the oil for nothing. And I saw this also in Venezuela. I knew Hugo Chavez, and he said, we're not an oil colony anymore. That's a good way to get yourself killed. Talk about someone who really faced a threat. He may have died young, but he died of natural causes. He stayed ahead of them, but, they wanted to knock him off badly. So, it's, as soon as you get into oil and finance, the people with the information really are facing dangers, but not the journalists.
Well, thank you, Greg Palast, for coming on the show today. Go to gregpalast.com. Check out all of Greg's latest articles. That's gregpalast.com. Thank you again, Greg, for coming on the show.
You're the best.